curriculum isn't the only answer, but the fact that the government has set a clear intent that children from an early age are going to start learning about money, we think is a moment worth celebrating.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Sense of Identity. As those of you who've seen this before know, try to make sure we chat to people that are doing fabulous and interesting things and really important things in this particular case. So if I may welcome the CEO of Money Ready, Leon Ward.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We've been doing some work with you guys most recently in relation to Department of Business and Trade Smart Data Challenge, where there was some topics that were really, really pertinent to what you guys are doing. So before we sort of start chatting and me rambling like I normally do, I wondered whether perhaps you could give us a little bit of a briefing about, well, what your day-to-day activity is as a business and the important stuff you're doing. And this is really pertinent, I think, because of some of the stuff we've heard in literally the last few days where things like curriculums are starting to include subjects they should have done for a long time. So fabulous time to be talking about this. So thanks for joining us.
It is. It's a good time. I mean, the spotlight on financial education at the moment is completely welcome. So to start at the beginning, I guess we're Money Ready. We're a charity that is trying to build a financially fluent population. And I'm sure we'll get into what some of that means, but effectively we are out delivering sessions to children, young people and adults to help them be on top of their money. And we do that right from like what we might think as the basic topics like budgeting, banking, income and spending, right up to some of those more complex topics like compound interest rates, mortgages, borrowing, risk, insurance, cryptocurrency, scams, all the things that change quite regularly in this world. And the reason there's a spotlight on financial education at the moment is because last week, the curriculum review announced that financial education is going to be a compulsory part of the primary and secondary school curriculum for the first time in England ever.
That's amazing. I mean, for you guys particularly, because you've been banging this drum, and it's so important, isn't it? You know, when you talk about kids these days, just that breadth of topic, that must have been such great news for you guys.
It's quite unique to work for a charity where when you tell people what you do, almost everybody says, God, that's a good thing. And actually, I need some of that now. I wish I had it when I was a kid, but I actually need some of it now. And so for us, yeah, we're extremely thrilled to see this news. Now, it's not the only solution because it has actually been on the curriculum in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland for a while. And it's been on the secondary curriculum for a while. The curriculum isn't the only answer, but the fact that the government has set a clear intent that children from an early age are going to start learning about money, we think is a moment worth celebrating.
Amazing. And just again, for those who are listening into this, because I know you have interactions with the financial services industry, and was really pleased to hear that some of those big organizations out there are stepping forward to try and help, you know, because these things take resource and people and a huge effort on your part. What's the practical, how is this practically happening for you already? You know, despite that announcement, you're already doing this stuff. So what does that mean out there?
Yeah, so the majority of our staff are people out there delivering sessions. So today there are, 45 to 55 people delivering sessions to children, young people and adults. And as I say, the topics that we cover vary according to the needs of the audience. Now, in our young adult space, so the 16 plus space, the young people actually can get a level 1 in personal financial management. So it's a course that's regulated by an awarding body called the Skills and Education Group, who accredit lots of different programs across the country. And so what we're trying to do is deliver real world lessons in communities. So most of the sessions that we go to are happening in community centres or youth centres, schools, colleges, sometimes workplaces, if we're commissioned in to go and work with young graduates, for instance, or apprentices. And so every day, as I say, we are spending time trying to build the real world financial skills, knowledge and confidence of people.
And just this announcement, because as I say, I think probably, you know, and the reason I was really keen to do this, Leon, was because I felt ignorant. I didn't understand the amount of effort that was already going into something which feels like an absolute no-brainer, doesn't it? But you guys are already out there doing this. Will this be a springboard to enable you to do more, or, you know?
Well, yet to be confirmed. We're not sure.
Right.
Ultimately, putting something on the curriculum is all well and good, but the people charged to deliver the curriculum also have quite poor financial literacy rates because none of us received it at school. And so you're a workforce of teachers who have the same financial capability as the general population, because they are the general population. So
Yeah.
themselves don't understand some of the topics. And what's really rich, when I go and watch our programs being delivered in secondary schools to people, sometimes teachers that are 10, 20 years into their teaching career, nearly always, I think every single session I've been to, at the end, the teacher said, I've learned something new today, about, God, if I'd known that 20 years ago, I might be richer, or I might have a smaller mortgage, or I might have more savings, or I might have paid into my pension earlier, or whatever it happened to be. And I think that for us is one of the opportunities is, we're ready to help the government get teachers ready, because that's something that we've got some experience of doing. And then notwithstanding that, it's not going to be implemented until 2028.
Right.
All the students that are in the classrooms right now, so the people listening to this who did the school run this morning, your kids unlikely to get a financial education at school. So all of those children still need support. So we're going to be here to support those as the government, starts to roll this out into schools and we start seeing the impact of that. But I think it will take a generation or two of school children. I think the ones that will really impact have probably not even been thought about yet. They're kids that are still in the planning. There's still a few years before they're bums on seats in schools.
And you just, I mean, in my heart, you just think, well, I just hope this gets some acceleration and enables you guys to do more of what you're already doing. But it makes perfect sense that that actually the teach the teacher piece is going to be so critical to getting this out. Kids they've just been exposed to so many different topics these days, and they're so early, in terms of, they're carrying around devices that mean that when they get on the bus or do this and that, they can pay instantly. I mean, how do you cope with that sort of changing landscape? Because you really are at the sharp end of it, aren't you?
Yeah, we actually had a discussion last week around whether we need to start changing our reference to cash in our curriculum. Now, we use cash as one of the tools. So in primary school, we do things like coin recognition with children so they can recognize what coins and notes are. That probably needs to be the limit for how we talk about cash now, because most children, young people are accessing, buying things cashless. People now, most of the banks now have a free current account for children. And so we're seeing that take off. There might not be much money in it, but if the child is out there buying with the support of their family, it tends to be without cash these days. And then I guess at the other end of the scale is where you've got young adults who, have never, ever been paid like cash in hand, like a wage. Remember the old wage envelopes you used to get?
Wage slips. Yeah. I'm old enough to remember that, sadly.
Yes, those little brown envelopes. I remember that, and I'm only 33.
But I'm surprised you're old enough to remember that, Leon. I mean,
I worked in a donut and rock shop down on Cleethorpes Seafront, and I remember getting paid in one of those little brown boxes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so those sorts of things where there's lots of people who have not had that experience, and so for them, it's numbers on the screen. And the problem with it being numbers on a screen, and we're all guilty of this, is it just doesn't feel real. It's so easy to spend. You can spend hundreds, thousands of pounds now contactlessly if you're using your phone without the blink of an eye. Back in the day, when you used to have to count out the notes, or you used to have to go to the bank for a special withdrawal, what that did was put a friction point, and it made you think perhaps twice about whether or not this was the right thing to do. Even if you didn't think twice, handing over that, the wad of cash like we used to always made something sink, didn't it? No one likes thinking what. Whereas if you're just transacting something invisibly, I don't think it has the same psychological impact.
I think you're right, and I think the other thing, and I'm really interested to understand how you contended with it, is fundamentally, there are a lot of, like you say, compound interest and debt, and the whole idea of savings and pensions and all that stuff. I mean, there was enough there to learn through that, but you've now got this whole new layer, haven't you, of the new world, the new what kids are exposed to. How do you deal with that? Inclusion. I know when we were going through the recent working together, that was a word that came up very frequently from your team, ensuring that you're trying to cover the scope of everybody. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's basically putting in the core foundations in the basic modules to be able to unlock like a point of curiosity. So for instance, if you're a 9-year-old and we talk to you about banking, one of the things that we do is we have a game in the program where you have to choose your bank according to the interest rate that they pay. So the really cool looking bank pays 1%, but the glittery pink bank pays 4% on your savings. And at the start of the session, most of the children will choose the really cool looking bank because it looks cool. But actually, when we then try to teach them the power of interest rates, they then tend to move to the glittery. Some people stay on the cool side, and that's fine. But some people move to the glittery, not so cool bank to be able to earn that interest rate. And what we're doing there is, yes, okay, we're getting them to pick in the moment a better product, if you like, or a better interest rate, but also raising that knowledge, skills, and confidence so that in the future, when they ever see a percent sign related to their money, they think twice about it. And if that means going to GPT and saying, what does 4.3% APR mean? Then I don't mind. I'm comfortable with that. But it's what they've asked. And without that session or without that intervention, they might not have done that. And I think it's about agency, because we don't judge people for whatever products they want to use. We just try and get them to sort of think twice before accessing products.
Yeah, I get you've won if you've done that, haven't you? I think if you know, and what was the phrase you used there at the beginning about that soliciting the interest, creating a little spark?
I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's something around like asking twice, being curious.
Yeah, love it.
A bit of agency around. Oh, I remember that session where something around AER was mentioned. I can't remember what that is. I'm gonna Google again before I actually take out the product or whatever it is that did. And from an inclusion perspective, the way that we do it is we listen to our learners. So we ask for their feedback. We sense check that then with other research in the sector. So for instance, one of the things we saw recently was the high number of children and young people that are falling to online risks and scams. Everybody thinks financial risks and scams affects old people. That is partly true, but it also affects young people who are targeted. And we ran an online lesson that children could tune into across the country in their classrooms, talking about online risks and scams. Last week, or the week before, during Talk Money Week, we did another one, which was how gaming uses techniques to get you to spend money. And we explored loot boxes, and we explored like what it means to speed up the building of your farm at the cost of £3. Why the game has built that into it. Why is it hardwired? Well, it's hardwired because they want you to spend money. And so we try to produce content that is in the real world, because that's one of our values, living in the real world. And so we're always adapting to what's out there.
Yeah, I get it. And also the that idea you're creating a little alarm bell if you see a technique employed that's sort of trying to tempt you over the edge. So how have you seen things change? Because obviously the delivery mechanism these days for education, as across so many different areas, but also the devices, the world we live in with smart devices. There are those that have and those that haven't, I guess, and some that will probably be less fortunate in terms of getting as much support at home or the technology. How do you try and deal with that sort of diverse landscape as well, Leon?
It's a real challenge. I mean, the role of the home, all the research shows out there in terms of building good habits. If these things aren't replicated at home, it's kind of pointless. That's across things like nutrition, dentistry support, anything in life, if it doesn't happen in the home. And so the home is really an important mechanism, which is why we tend to see lots of people at 16 plus when they might not have moved out of home, but they're transitioning to independence. So they might have their own job and their own income source and whatnot. So we talk to people at a point where there's kind of some self-control over these things. And it's one of the reasons why we're so committed to face-to-face delivery in a world that is full of digital products, actually, to get people to feel comfortable and safe to talk about their financial position, often not having a lot of money. They might have some, often not a lot, or not coming from a background where there's money in abundance. And, if money was in abundance, that would solve most people's problems. Even though you should still have a good financial education, even if you've got cash. But the point being that in the moment, our trainers are experts at getting you, somebody who's 17 years old, who might have a little Saturday job, for the first time talking about a topic no one's ever spoken to you about. The reason why financial education is such a complex problem is everyone thinks it's a good thing and everyone wants more of it. But there is still a sort of shame, I think, around money. And when you're down the pub with friends or you're talking to family, often people say, oh, I never look at my payslip. I don't know what any of it means. And we just laugh it off. Whereas if we had that same thing as, I actually can't read, we would never have the same response to illiteracy to what we do have with financial illiteracy. And that for me is a challenge. Like, why do we laugh it off? Why are we not having serious conversations saying, no, you should be on top of your pension because it's really going to impact your future life. And
I mean,
actually, we joke about it. And I think that's an odd dynamic.
yeah, and you're right. And actually, I mean, it also sort of does bring up that sort of whole piece around age demographic, because financial literacy affects everybody. I mean, I appreciate you can only do what you can do with the resource you've got, but do you see a world where Money Ready's access might increase in terms of other age demographics if it had the ability to do so? Because, you know, like you say, that going home and talking to you or your parents talking about a subject which inherently, you know, builds interest, and, you know, if the parents are similarly, you know, struggling with some of those things, then I can see this applies to everybody, doesn't it? That's the point. There's only so much you can do.
And you tend to get, the research shows financial confidence with older people is higher. Now, part of that is just been around longer, frankly.
Life.
Yeah, it's life. You've had 30, 40 years on top of a 16-year-old to be able to actually understand. You might have been in a workplace where, you know, they've run a session on your pension, so therefore you understand your pension. You might have been in a workplace that allows you to claim back some healthcare benefits. And so each of these steps build your financial literacy. And no surprise at the other end then, when you're at the start of your career, start of living on your own, you're learning as you go. The problem is learning as you go allows potential pitfalls. And we're trying to say to people, make whatever choices you want. But if those are informed choices, that is more powerful in terms of then dealing with the consequences or the benefits of your decision. So if you choose to opt out of your workplace pension, you know, and you want to leave money on the table and you don't want your employer to contribute to your pension, but at least you get a bit of extra cash at the end of the month because you're not paying into your pension. As long as you know that and the impact of that, then that decision is on you. Now, and this is where a really good example of how government can really help with these things. Auto enrollment, single best policy decision for pension savings ever. However, because people are not on top of their pensions, what's now happening is the minimum contribution for many people is seen, well, that's enough. If that's the law, that's enough. And if you look at all of the research, and, you know, that's why we've had such a big kick up to the potential policy proposals around NI contributions on pension contributions. It's showing you we need to get people saving way more than they are at the moment. And like in Iceland, for instance, if you don't save enough into your pension, the government force you to. You get sent a bill at the end of the year saying you haven't paid enough into your pension, off you go. Whereas here, you can opt out. That's madness.
Yeah.
But people are doing that without information. And my view is that if you're opting out with all the information put in front of you, and you understand it, and that's a choice you have decided to make, then I think that's a better position than you opting out uninformed.
100%. Now, during all of these conversations, there are a number of different stakeholders that are important through this. You know, so the charities, government, bank, fintechs, regulators, schools. It feels like you guys are almost trying to serve the purpose of being the glue between all of these guys to have a coherent way forward. How does that operate, or can it operate, you know, if it's allowed to?
Yeah, that's true. I do think we bridge a lot of these people together, frankly. And what's interesting is I think it requires all of us to be able to do this. And so if I just continue with my example of auto enrollment, the next best thing would be a pensions dashboard built into my banking app, not the pension dashboard that everyone's talking about now, because I think that's 20 years old now. You kind of need that further. I need to be able to log into my bank account and at the bottom be able to see my pension pots wherever they are. That's the power of open banking. So I need government to legislate for that to happen through open banking. I need fintechs to mandate that they'll work together to get that to happen. And then I need the population to have a level of education where they're then proactively looking at their pension. We call that financial fluency, because I don't need you to be a pensions expert all the time. Just in that moment where someone has a conversation, you think, oh God, I better look at mine. And then you go home and you spend 3 days accessing all your different platforms to find out where then you realize you've got 20 pensions, and then you consolidate. You know, I just want you to be a pension expert for the 24 hours that you're interested in it. And again, that's where fluency comes into this, because it's a bit like, you know, when you go to abroad, you might download a certain language app to learn a few words around saying hello, good morning, thank you, and the rest of it. I kind of want the same approach to people with money. So you know, in the moment you're buying your car insurance, something you have to do every year. We all forget the rules. And then, you know, the day before you're due to renew, you realize you've left it too late and all the rest of it. And then you become an expert on car insurance 24 hours. Then you forget about it again. You do need all parties to play their part. And I think auto enrollment, as an example, is just a really powerful one at what can be done.
I love your passion around it. So continuing that theme for a second,
Yeah.
if someone can unlock the shackles you've got of resource and budget and all those things, what would be the dream outcome, the dream project? It's more around what you were talking there, but I guess it's not always easy, is it?
No. And the dream would be that, and this is where, again, we need all those players to play their part. At the point that I am receiving financial services and products, to have independent financial education put in front of me would be great. So every time I compare my car insurance, if there was a pop-up video, somebody in a Money Ready t-shirt like this, independent to the person I'm buying the car insurance from, to tell me the benefits of things like a higher excess fee or not. Do I need breakdown? Do I already have breakdown cover elsewhere? Because most people are over-insuring or over.
Yeah.
Someone to just explain all this stuff to me that isn't there with an agenda. And if you follow that example through, when I'm on my bank account and it lets me open a overdraft or apply for an overdraft, a video pops up and says, this is an overdraft. This is how it works. This is what happens if you can't pay it back. And we actually do see examples of this in the investment world now, where you have to, if you go on Crowdcube or something to help crowdfund where you buy shares in a new business and whatever, it asks you several questions around your risk understanding and your understanding of investments. And then it will say you're a low risk, medium or high risk investor. Same when you open a stocks and shares ISA. Do you understand what's happening? That's the platforms now have to ask you these things. I would those kind of education points across all products where you are expected to part with your cash. If you can put some of your holiday on a credit card, this offers you extra statutory protection. These are the benefits of doing that. If you don't do it, these are the risks. So, it's done at the point of use, really, at the point of interaction, rather than trying to do everything all in a couple of days. We cover everything in our couple of days because we know it's the only chance we're going to get with people. So which
is awful, isn't it? I mean, it should have been. It feels like a real, I don't know, almost like a school, an error, doesn't it? Really, that this wasn't, encompassed before. Because you're right. You can only get to financial fluency if you're empowered with information and education and understanding, and yet it's been missing, from the curriculum for so long. When your team, sorry, go on, please.
Say there are so many examples of where else we fail as a nation with this. Another one that I'm quite passionate about is like nutrition information. At school, you learn maybe through home ec or cooking or whatever the subject was called, maybe how to make one or two meals, but we don't really do full and proper education on nutrition. So, what a healthy balance. Most people listen to this will remember that poster in school. And it was like rate your plate, and it had a third protein and some fiber and all the rest of it. Most people remember that. But actually, one of the problems that we face is the education sometimes isn't landed right. Similarly with PE, you might learn how to play rounders, but actually most people's fitness these days is in a brick container called a gym. Why are we not to use a gym?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah, I've never even thought about that. It's very true.
I've never learned how to do a bicep curl until I went to the gym, because my PE teaching was doing the bleep test.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how easy this be to answer, because I should imagine the amount of feedback you get from the audience, the children, and those that are in the higher. What are the things that they sit at the sit on the priority list from children once they start to understand a bit more about this? What are the things that they feed into that?
They all want to know how to make more money. That is across the ages. They want to know how to grow their money, and they are interested in investments. They're interested in cryptocurrency, even though, as a nation, we sort of slapped risk warnings on investments of every type. Even opening a stocks and shares ISA, which is an investment, but it's a relatively safe investment because it's a tax-free wrapper. Over the course of history, investments like that have tended to do well. And even though we sort of slap risk warnings across all of these things, we do find a hunger for this stuff. Our trainers are good at is also managing expectations, because very often you will go into a school, even as to people that are about to leave school, and they think they're going to leave school, get a job and earn 100 grand, straight out the bat. Straight out the bat. And I think that is the risk of things like TikTok and influencers. It does set unrealistic ambition for most people. Having said that, we will say, here's how you can go and earn 100 grand. These are the sorts of jobs that you need for that. This is how you can grow your money should you ever get some. And it's going to be interesting because we've got the great transfer of wealth happening over the next few years, where the boomer wealth is going to transfer to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the up and coming kids. This is I think it's something like 300 odd billion pounds is expected to transfer in the next 10 years, but it's transferring to a group of people that have had no solid financial education.
It's mad, isn't it? And you're bang on. I used to talk about this. I never understood why at school, and we could all reflect on how good or bad or attentive we were at school, probably less so than I should have been. But no one sat down with me and said, look, you'll be able to do nicer things, possibly, and I know it's not all about money, but it does give you the opportunity to possibly savor things that you might not otherwise. If you come out of this experience with more bits of paper with saying you're good at stuff than those that don't, it doesn't mean to say you won't necessarily, but your chances are higher. No one sort of sat and said that practically, did they, when we were kids?
No.
Which is a really strange thing.
And the thing is, the reason we focus on schools so much is like most people go to school and most people go to work. They are, in my mind, the two avenues to deliver good, solid financial education. Like, I actually think employers should have a duty to help you understand your pension, to help you understand your payslip. In fact, I'd go a step further. Employers should make your payslip easy to read. Why do we still use net and gross pay? I don't know why we use that. Why don't payslips say take home pay at the bottom now?
Yeah.
Pre-tax pay or whatever. I think simplifying the language, everyone gets confused about net and gross. So there are two solutions: either teach everyone the difference or communicate it differently.
It is. Sometimes the simplest things don't seem to resonate. I mean, and I really hope that the announcements recently will arm you in whatever that means, or the Money Ready team, to do more, because you're already on the path, aren't you? But you know what I mean? I just hope that accelerates quick enough to make a real demonstrable difference for you, because it's crazy.
If there's anybody listening to this that works at one of the big fintechs who can help me realize the ambition of Money Ready trainers being put in front of people at the point that they're making financial decisions, then please get in touch, because I think that's the sweet spot. And we are seeing in modern fintech companies, we are seeing some of those things happen. Like my bank account, I can see my credit score within the bank account now. Remember the days where you used to have to download and enter a free trial before they then charged you to access your credit? Those days are gone. It's great. If we can take credit scores to the masses at the click of a button because they're already using these apps, fantastic. I can write it within the app now. But there are some more at the other end of the kind of basic, more complex stuff that I think could be better embedded into these apps. And I think anyone that develops those is going to be onto a winner, frankly.
Well, I hope some of the people listening to this, will take something from that, and by all means, contact Gillian or contact us, and we'll make sure we connect you up. But this is a subject for me that you could talk about for a long time. And I love your passion, your team's passion about what you're trying to do, and I just hope some of the changes are positive. We're certainly keen to try and help where we can. I always like to finish these sessions off, it's okay. I'm not sure you were pre-warned about this one or not, but to ask clever people if they could give themselves, as a youngster, and I think this is particularly pertinent given what you do, a little bit of advice, what would it be?
Related to money, I think it's about trying to portion it out. So yes, enjoy it, but try and keep a little bit of sensibility on you and save for the future, because you never know what's coming around the corner. And there have been, I was in my 20s when we went into the lockdowns, those sorts of things. Whilst I'm not saying the next big unknown is another national lockdown, the point is we don't know what it is. And almost immediately, the first question on people's mind was about money. Almost immediately, it was like, well, what am I going to do? I can't work. I can't spend either. There was a benefit there, but ultimately just enjoy your money, put it to work because you work really hard for it. So make sure it's working as best as it can for you and enjoy the benefits from it, whatever that might be for you.
Fantastic. Leon Ward, CEO, Money Ready. Really, really grateful for you agreeing to participate in this. And I hope the team continue to drive all those fantastic ambitions in the right direction with the recent changes. But thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.